I'm Sunny, and this is...
Hi, I'm Amy.
And we are here to give you the first edition of how to take your sheepdog from shabby to chic.
And this is Steve, our demo dog.
Hi, Steve.
Thank you, Steve.
Good job, Steve.
Okay, we're back.
Okay, so now we're going to trim up the butt. Now, Steve doesn't have a lot of hair, so I'm just doing this so that you can get a general idea of what tools you would typically use to trim the rear. I have a wonderful crew in the back, having wonderful commentary. It's pretty hilarious.
Trouble over
There's
the
trouble. Anyways, we have what again?
I'm swiping the gallery here. Okay.
We have what we call this is a butt comb, as I call it, or a poodle comb, which is the more technical.
Googling it, it's going to be a poodle comb.
It's going to be a poodle comb. I'm going to step in front of you because I'm more comfortable going from this side. When you're trimming a sheepdog rear, I always start and I fluff. This is after you've brushed your dog. So imagine that he has been fully brushed. And I take a butt comb, poodle comb, and I fluff up the rear to get as much hair pulled up as I possibly can. Now again, this trim is going to be for cleanliness. If I were trimming for a show dog, I have a whole complicated, ridiculous process that I use to trim a rear and a show dog.
Advanced mathematical formula.
Pretty much, and I'm not going to cover that today.
Now, just to be clear, you would have line brushed all the way back.
Yes.
This all would have been line brushed
yes,
completely.
always
your dog
Everything would have been
first,
line
and then you're
brushed,
trimming
and now-
second.
Okay.
Yes, so we're just pretending right now that I line brushed this entire dog.
Okay, well, let's say that you think you've done it, but you want to do a double check and make sure there aren't any dingleberries. How do you check for dingleberries?
I check with a comb, and I go through and I pull up.
I check with
to
my
see.
fingers.
I like to pull and see, oh, we have one that fell off. Woo! With the comb. But you can use your fingers too, and it's fine. Because it's usually
Yeah, that's Greyhound comb.
Yeah, I use the Greyhound
too.
because I don't like
Hi, Steve.
pulling poop off. Okay, so
This is a scissors. It's a cheap, basically it's not one of the expensive scissors we use, but it's a relatively cheap scissors. It's by Fromm, and you can get it at Sally's Beauty Supply. You don't necessarily need a great expensive scissors like Sunny's going to use.
Yes, sorry.
But I wanted to bring my Fromm scissor along because I like doing butts with my Fromm scissors.
Now, that's not a very long scissor, inch-wise.
Right, because I personally do not like long scissors. I like to take the small scissors,
Okay.
especially if you're starting out. Once you get used to doing this, then you can get scissors with really long blades and just whack it off.
Okay,
Right.
then.
except you don't want scissors that are too long. I have scissors that are appropriate for my hand size. That's just, again, this goes into the more advanced trimming, and we don't have to cover that because it's boring for the general population.
And I like to start, personally, with my own dogs, like to start cutting out the butthole. Because if they have diarrhea, it's going to stick. And so I cut out the butthole. And you don't have to do a lot. Like for show people, you can't see it. But for pet people, go ahead and cut out the butthole. Because otherwise, the dingleberries will hang on.
So that explains it. Even after I've trimmed a dog and I think
Sorry,
she's
Sonny.
short,
That's fine.
she still has some.
Yeah, I see.
Dingleberries.
Yeah,
Yes.
so see, you have a nice butthole. And then I use that as reference as to how short I want to get the rest of the...
Got it.
So then I will come back in. I always fluff from the bottom. Now I've switched combs. I've gone to the Greyhound comb. So apparently we just are all about naming combs after dogs. Poodle comb, and then Greyhound comb. And which is ironic, I realize, because Greyhounds have no hair. So we're gonna comb up, and I fluff. I just go in and I fluff. I actually don't pull out because when you're trimming a rear end, it seems to leave actual more holes. So this is more for the aesthetic purposes that I'm talking about. Amy is providing you with more functional information probably than I am right now. But when you're trimming a rear end, I like to think of it as you're trying to think of it as having a plate over their butt. So you want a flatter plane. You
They
take
should
off.
look like bears. You
Yeah,
know how
they should-
bears look? It shouldn't have a ledge. You shouldn't have a ledge of hair that hangs over.
Right. You always
You
would.
should look like a butt, a bear butt.
Yeah. You can take your comb and you can pull this ledge out and then you trim it.
Now, why don't we want that ledge?
I don't know. It's more aesthetic
They're
to
supposed to
me.
look like bears, right, Chris?
Right.
Okay.
And so here's the other piece. So for individuals who are not as familiar with the breed is known as having a rise from their shoulder to their loin. It's one of their main
Breed
characteristics. And so to accentuate that, we don't want to have a shelf because it makes it look like their rears are falling off then. And so instead, we trim to accentuate the rise from their shoulders to their rear.
Now,
Like
right
when-
now, the way you have him spread out, it looks like he doesn't have a top line, but he actually does have a rise.
He does, right. It's just,
And then
it's
when
a
I brush
trimming
out, it
thing.
angles itself.
So as you can see, I'm trying to get as close to that marker that Amy left me. And I'm also trying to round this hair down here, because I don't personally like when it's stringy. When it's stringy, it's more likely to get matted, dirty, and hard to brush. And anything that you brush in the back and the rear, it's more sensitive. So the more hair you can trim off, the better. But I'm coming down here.
If it's easier for you to see, feel free to walk around and.
So I start with a flat plate and then I kind of curve out because I would brush this hair up. I don't like, this is aesthetic. And I trim some of the side hairs down so that doesn't come wisping back. Okay, and then I come this way. Now I always like to start cutting so that my scissors are down because it makes a smoother cut. When you cut up, if you're not good at your,
And never cut this way because you'll have lines.
you'll always have lines. When you,
Go up and down,
yeah, up and down or
down.
down and up,
Up or
and
down.
if you get, I'm not gonna talk about getting fancier. But I typically either cut this way, down, or I cut up. When you cut up, now though, you do have a higher likelihood of leaving a hole, I have found. And so I always come back to see how does my line look? Where else do I need to trim off more hair?
Now, when you're learning to do this, if you leave a hole, it's not the end of the world, because how often do you do this trim on a normal pet dog?
Usually I would say once a month.
Right, so you're gonna catch it the next trimming.
Yeah, like
So you
Chris
can
said,
say-
like Chris said too, sorry, I mean to step in.
Yep.
The old way that I was taught also was that the palm of your hand right here fits over the butthole. And then you fan out your hand, and that's how it should look. So you you can take your scissors this way and fan this like this. That's
So
another, that's another way to do it.
That's another way. I learned the pie plate way first. I do fan out. I feel like that's fancier.
I remember you doing that, so why did you change in your case?
This, you know what, I still do it. I do it,
It's supposed to look like a chrysanthemum.
right. I do it when I'm doing, when
what
I'm
it's
just
supposed to look
doing a pet, when I'm just doing it for my pets, I pretty much come across, and then I'll usually finish doing it this way. But I always do, just to take the hair off, I just come straight across.
I do it the same way,
Yeah,
yeah.
so those are kind of the techniques. There's a couple different
We're all
ways.
taught by different people and we have similar methods.
Yeah,
But they all reach the same
goal.
goal.
They do. They all look a little different because again, there's also there's a style piece to this of what people prefer, what shapes they're trying to put in dogs. Again, that's for advanced trimming. But for cleanliness purposes, you can see you remove a lot of the hair that might normally get stuck with poop if they have diarrhea, if they sit in dirt and mud. The shorter you can keep this and
Make sure you be careful
less
of the
scrape.
testicles.
Yep, I know, you have to watch those guys. I always leave hair, as you can see. But the shorter you can make this, or at least trimmed up, I have also found that hair that has been trimmed, the edges are less likely to knot. So that's another reason, even if you want to keep your sheepdog longer, to trim off some of this hair, because when it gets a little bit stringy at the bottom, it mats, and those mats I find are harder on the dog to get out. It pulls, they're not as easy to pull apart. So I'm a big advocate for keeping a dog trimmed up kind of all around if you want that look, just because I think it works easier for grooming, for maintenance grooming. So you can see now, I have a nice flat rear. It's slightly angled, so if you come over this way, Christine, it has a slight angle to it, but it's flat all the way across.
So, and that has the angle because,
Again, because it shows angulation on the dog. If we were to do the rest of the dog, all of the pieces would come together and he.
You don't have to.
You don't have to do it that way. I just like it from again, that's aesthetic. That's not
It's a show trick.
it's a
more
show
than
trick
anything.
than anything. It's just aesthetic and that's what I like.
Make sure they just look like a bear.
But you can see, he looks like a bear.
Okay, Steve, hold on. We're gonna pull out here and get your bear look.
He looks like a sheepdog bear.
I'm gonna go over the fence here. That'll be good. Very nice.